Hello and welcome to the Movie Bunker podcast. It's me, Matt.
Hi, it's me, Chris. And we're joined again by a great guest, Jane Crowther. Welcome to the podcast, Jane.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
For the listeners out there who may not be familiar with you or what you do, tell us a bit about yourself.
I'm the editor of Total Film, which is a monthly movie magazine in the UK. And we write about films every month. It's a good job, I have to say.
How's things been going? I mean,
there's not a lot to write about, is there? Basically with Total Film, it seems like we are cursing movies because every time we put a film on our cover, it gets pulled to next year. So it could be me that's doing this. We've just had a run of Bond and Black Widow and Tenet and Wonder Woman and Free Guy, none of which you can actually see anytime soon. But we're still managing to get by on the stuff that's actually going to VOD, which is, there's loads of good stuff out there. So, I don't think we're suffering too much as film fans.
There seems to be a little bit more of a news or updates now in terms of how things are slowly getting back to normal too, I think.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, cinemas are open. I've yet to be in one, but I hope to be in one soon.
Was it something you're rushing back to or itching to get back to? Or are you happy with kind of what's happening, so as you say, on video on demand?
I mean, I don't know. I'm sort of a bit institutionalized now. I'm kind of used to it, as we all are. We've got used to the new normal, haven't we?
Mm.
But I still crave the idea of seeing a film with an audience and that community experience, and watching a scary movie with a load of people and we're all scared together, or watching a comedy and laughing together. I think you massively miss that when you're watching it on a laptop or you're watching it on your Netflix on your TV. So yeah, I am looking forward to that. Just hoping to do it safely.
I've seen a couple of drive-throughs have sort of sprung up recently, which is, I think, a very good idea. But they seem to be like older
good.
films. Yeah, when the weather's good. Yeah. With that massive caveat, it would be quite difficult to watch a film through that driving rain.
Yeah, through the rain we had last week. Imagine that could be interesting. I mean, unless you're watching, Seven, it would be fine.
Yeah, or Titanic.
Or at least, or the first part of Jurassic Park with all that rain. I mean,
exactly. It would just be atmospheric.
Nice. Atmospheric. But anyway, it was a good job when we got all these old classics to catch up on or watch or rewatch, isn't it? Mm-hmm. I mean, that's what, this is what this podcast is all about. But you've picked an absolute cracker from 1995. What was the movie you've chosen, Jane?
It's Waterworld.
The future. The polar ice caps have melted, and the Earth lies beneath a watery grave. Those who survived have adapted to a new world.
What did you see out there in your 15 lunars?
Such as?
An end? An end to all this water?
You're asking the wrong person.
You weren't there.
So what's the word? We trading or not?
And the human dream is the search for a mythical place called dry land.
It doesn't exist!
How can you be sure?
Because I sailed farther than most have dreamed. I've never seen it.
This place, this whole way of living, it's ending.
Straight line leading directly to dry land?
Dry land is not just our destination, but it is our destiny!
Universal Pictures presents a world unlike any you have ever seen. Kevin Costner, Dennis Hopper, Gene Triplehorn. Waterworld.
speaking of water and deluges, Waterworld, where everyone is wet all the time, never knowingly dry. It's a great film.
Yeah, this is the plot synopsis for Waterworld. In the future, where the polar ice caps have melted and Earth is almost entirely submerged, a mutated marina fights off starvation and outlaws smokers, and reluctantly helps a woman and a young girl trying to find dry land. And reluctantly is the optimum word there, because he is a bit of well, he's not very approachable, is he?
He's a big old grouch, isn't he? He's a fish grouch. He's a man with gills, and he's not interested in helping anyone. He's just interested in tomato plants and like moon boots that he can wear. He's not a very sympathetic character, but he is played by Kevin Costner, and I think that star wattage goes a long way to sort of liking him and wanting him to sort of develop some empathy.
Certainly in 1995, he was definitely an absolute catch, pardon the pun, in terms of box office draw. But this movie on Rotten Tomato score, which is kind of what we kind of gauge our film to choose, is 46%, which is a complete splatter. It fares a bit better on IMDb, but it was not well received critically, was it?
No, and I think the knives were out for it a little bit, because it was one of those ones like Titanic that sort of went massively over budget and had all sorts of disasters happen. The set was built in Hawaii and got like washed away by a hurricane, and Kevin Costner doesn't appear to be that great at working with directors. He directed Dance with Wolves, and then he'd gone on to sort of do Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves with the director here, Kevin Reynolds, and sort of clashed over artistic vision. So people were calling it fish tar before it even came out. But I saw it when it came out, and I was just like pleasantly surprised, because I just thought this is just a huge daft romp, and it's really going for that vision of this ridiculous sort of world. And frankly, like when you watch something like Fury Road, it's not too dissimilar. Fury Road has done a good deal better, but I do think that there's sort of seeds of that in Waterworld. I know that's big talk, but I do think so.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it kind of conjures up all sorts of other movies that have been and gone since then.
Does it conjure up lots of other movies, or is it just Mad Max films?
Well, Mad Max, I was thinking about Escape from LA and Escape from New York, and that sort of vibe, especially even something like Tank Girl, just the sort of themes running through it, and just the danger and peril, especially to young children and grown adults. That was something that always seems to be happening in the 90s movies. Yeah. But do you want to go for the cast, Matthew? Just to point out who was in this movie other than Kevin Costner.
Well, I mean, obviously the other big name is Dennis Hopper, who plays Deacon, the bad guy, and goes full bad guy, right? He fully surrenders himself to the role. You got Jane Crowther, who plays Helen, who's kind of the surrogate mother of the sort of wonder child, Lost Hope, who's played by Tina Majorino, who was bugging me for ages because she's got a really familiar face as a child, so I had to Google her halfway through the film to realise that she's Napoleon Dynamite's girlfriend.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I was like, finally, that's where it is. We got also Nord, which was my favourite character in the film, played by Gerard Murphy, who's the only ginger man left on the planet.
And what a vibrant head of hair he has.
No, it's just, how does he, like, everyone's filthy, like, to their core, dirty.
Yeah. And he's managed to get hold of conditioner or something. I don't know. It's beautiful. It's like seeing brain. Yeah.
He looks like a lion. He's a lion man. He's definitely a cat out of water. But I think for me, Kevin Costner at this time, I should say, with The Bodyguard and The Postman, and what was the other one? The other big one?
Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, and Dances with Wolves.
Yes, of course.
Field of Dreams and Bull Durham. I mean, he was huge in the late 80s, early 90s.
But was this the film where people just wanted to pull him down?
Yeah, he might have got a bit too big for his boots, perhaps. Tall poppy syndrome struck. I don't know, but yeah. I mean, it is a ridiculous premise. When you read it out there at the beginning, it sounds mental, doesn't it? And how you sold this to Kevin Costner, I don't really know as well. It's like, Kev, you're the biggest star in the world right now. Do you want to play a man with gills that sort of boats around and is horrible to everybody? It's sort of weird that he took it, but he did.
This is another one of those movies, and we've had a real run of them in the podcast recently, where I haven't seen it until yesterday. Yeah, so it seems like every film Well, I mean, I haven't seen it in its entirety. I've got a kind of thing where I kind of watch these movies in bits and pieces and never really get to the end. And this is one of those ones since the very beginning where, for whatever reason, I never completed until this afternoon when I finished the last half of it, because it is quite long.
Yeah.
But I remember it being very different with the first half that I saw, at least. But it doesn't really strike me as a film that he would want to do, as you said, because there's very little character development. There's not a great deal of plot or storyline. In fact, it is just like a Duran Duran Wild Boys video. It's just a very limited space for anything to happen, apart from in this massive concoction that they've built on the sea.
Yeah. And, he's it's not his best look either. He's a sex symbol. And here he is with like a mullet and a jaunty shell earring, wearing fish skin suits and sort of, I don't understand the look at all. I have to say, though, it kind of still works for me. But, like what was, I don't really understand why anyone greenlighted this, really. It's a bit weird. But that's sort of what I love about it.
There's some inconsistencies with things as well in terms of the lime tree. Now, these are the notes I've written down. That's not how lime trees work. And this is a tiny lime tree. It's got like a bonsai
lime tree, right? With full-size fruit on it.
It's the same with the tomatoes. Now, I grow tomatoes. I tried to grow tomatoes, and they're incredibly hard to grow, right? So this guy can do it. Have a tiny pot, and then that's ridiculous. There's a lot of emphasis on dirt, quite rightly, obviously, because that's the main theme of the film, which is dirt on people and them trying to find the dirt, and then just weird exploding jet skis that would just normally not happen. It just seems to be a lot of action for action's sake. And even the first scene of the film, we get this kind of information dump in terms of where we are, and instead of it.
I like the opening. I like the way the Universal logo
that's
turned,
cool.
And we started seeing it flood up, and they go, "Ooh, we're used to seeing a planet, but now it's all."
And it's been a long time since you've had voiceover man, gravelly voiceover man, do an intro. Come on, that's great.
That intro, that bit is fine, but why introduce your main character then having a Wii into a pot and then changing it into normal?
Shows the desperation. I mean, I knew within sort of 10 minutes of this world building that they'd done, I would have died a long time ago, because it all just looked like such a massive ball ache that I don't like going to the beach for more than a couple of hours, let alone living on water constantly. I would have been one of the first victims. I'd have been well and truly out of there by now.
But this film, budget wise, was one of the main biggest stories of this movie. Was it spiraled and spiraled and spiraled out of control, and yet has a lot of love for this film based on that. It's got a very niche, not a niche audience, but a devout audience, really, hasn't it? Jane, you're one of them.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was at the time one of the most expensive films ever made. I think
it was the most expensive film at the time.
And when it spiraled out of control, as you say, and I think even like that they were warned just not to go ahead with it because it seemed so dicey to do this whole set on open water, but they did anyway, and then it all got destroyed. But I don't know, it's that sort of, it shouldn't work, the film, really, and yet on some weird level it does. And I do think that's just because of, like you mentioned, Dennis Hopper and his great, he knows what film he's in. He's like, this is ridiculous. I understand the tone of this, and I am going there and then some. And Costner is just like, I'm going to do all this like jumping and diving and grimacing, and they just, I think people admire the spirit of it, that they just went and did this, and it is ridiculous, but they're sort of committed to it, and there's something really sort of admirable and enjoyable about watching that.
Definitely.
I think you can see every penny on the screen as well.
Yeah.
Right? There's nothing left in the bank at all with this one. It really goes with a premise and sells it. I mean, I know obviously doing an apocalyptic world where everything's kind of jakey and crap is probably easier than doing a sleek, stylish, futuristic world, because you can just go around your local tip and then throw it all into onto the beach and Bob's your uncle. But it really is, there isn't any kind of like flaws, no bit of it you do look kind of ropey. All physical effects, all the stunt work and stuff. I mean, a lot of the stunts are highly contrived. Like, I mean, when they when the smokers perform the attack on the atoll, and they have like these ramps, these
Yeah.
boat ramps, and you're like, oh, I don't know. And then he sat on a
jet
tank.
skis underwater as well. That was cool.
Yeah. And if you could do that, why didn't they just do that straight away? I mean, that seems like a really obvious. It's like, oh, do you remember these things can go underwater? It's like, oh yeah. Probably didn't even need to bring the ramps. Really, when we think about it, we could have all just bobbed underneath.
It's better than for me. It was better than the Battle at Helm's Deep. It had.
Yeah, well, you don't get like water skiers behind an aeroplane at the Battle of Helm's Deep, do you?
It was bugging me for a long time how that aeroplane was taking off and landing if there was no land, until I realised there was a massive aircraft carrier involved. But those little characters.
No, hold on, don't gloss over that. You're not aware of seaplanes.
Oh, was it a seaplane?
It was a seaplane.
Oh, right. Okay, right. Then I stand corrected. Apologies. Then I have basically not done very well there with that spot. But yeah, okay. So fair enough. That's a little oversight on my behalf. But the little characters, especially the gun guy, who's looked like a little pig. Well, obviously, intentionally, made him look like an odd guy. Firing at the 8-ball, as you're saying. And
hello. Future Matt here. You might be wondering why Chris is referring to 8 balls. This will become clear later in the podcast.
And destroying it, and that whole thing where they're trying to communicate to him to get him to stop, and that's how Dennis Hopper loses his eye, and all the little comic beats in it as well with those characters were really crazy,
that was good.
deranged.
When he was going, because they were shouting Chuck, and he was like, maybe he doesn't like being called Chuck. Maybe he'll
call him
respond to
Charles.
Exactly. He's having a lot of fun.
But, I mean, that whole scene, goes on quite a while, and it's pretty awesome as an action sequence. It still stands up today. And I mean, so much so that Universal Studio, for years, I can remember seeing when I went to Universal Studios, they had a show called Waterworld where they had jet skis and people like rappelling in and sort of things blowing up. So, they were justly proud of this sequence. And I do think it still is a pretty good action sequence.
Whilst watching it, I was thinking this is some sort of Legoland pirate show thing that they have, and I was reminded that all the time is this Disneyland sort of exhibition piece that they do.
I was just looking through the cast, and I didn't realise Jack Black was the pilot of the plane.
Yes,
young Jack Black.
I didn't spot him.
It was very dirty.
He was very dirty. Everyone was very dirty, apart from, as we mentioned, Nord.
Can someone explain to me the plot with the girl and the map girl thing? Because I tried to keep up with it. Obviously, it wasn't that difficult, I guess, in some places because there's not a lot of plot going on. But where did she come from, and how was that? Did I miss that whole plot point?
She was found in a basket full of dirt by Helen, and with this tattoo. And obviously, her parents are now deceased on Mount Everest, which is dry land. And that map is the route back to them. I assume I don't think anyone ever explains it, but I just assumed that her parents wanted her to go out in the world and find someone to care for her, and that person to bring her back to dry land, which is the best place to live on Earth at this point.
Yeah.
But I may be reading far too much into it because this script is not sophisticated, really.
I was thinking of like the thought process of the parents. They're like, right, we want the best for our kid. What do we do? Well, let's tattoo
the baby.
Let's tattoo the baby, throw her in a bucket and chuck her in the water. It's the way of the world.
That's great survival, yeah.
It's like,
well, we've all thought about doing it.
I mean,
but why
not
just a note? And why so fucking cryptic? Come on, just you're going to put a map on a baby. I mean, I know babies aren't particularly large, but, put a bit more detail in there, please.
And it's also this idea that nobody all these people are sailing about all over because it's all water. Nobody has seen this place and nobody knows where it is. I mean, the world isn't that big. If there's all these people sailing all the time, surely somebody would have found it and would know. Yeah. And they'd be like, hey, everyone, come off your dirty atoll. You can have a bath over here, have a bit of green salad.
We got horses.
Why would that not be happening?
Horses for days.
Yeah. And things like, the smokers always smoking cigarettes. Where have they come from? I mean, this is now, we're in 2500 or something now?
Yeah.
How have they been smoking cigarettes for this long if nobody's ever found any sort of things from the past world, and people don't realise it existed. They're not rolling them, are they? Do they have like a Benson and Hedges factory there?
They looked far too good to be rolled.
It's just it was just there's lots of sort of total inconsistencies. But then,
I
mean, do we want to pick holes in something that has a man with gills and webbed feet? I mean,
so with regards to Fishman, is it something that is does he evolve? Has he evolved, was he a mutant man from the very beginning?
Well, no one says. They call him a mutant, don't they? So there's no knowing whether his mother had sex with a fish or whether he's actually mutated because he's so seafaring, the mariner. I don't know, but his gills are quite grim to look at.
A Wednesday night question that you never thought you'd be asked.
Yeah. But the sort of Michael Jetta, old Gregor character, because he's very interesting. He's clearly heard of, mutated people before, because he had all sorts of questions for him.
Yeah.
So clearly it's like, the sort of the people of the atoll were instantly scared and instantly wanted to murder him. But
I didn't know if that was social commentary on how we behave as societies when we're under threat. I didn't know whether that was trying for something.
Yeah, maybe turning people into compost.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what do they do with the goo? Is that how they grow wonderful tomato plants? Just by slowly dissolving people?
I also thought,
goo?
God, that atoll must stink.
Oh my word! Yeah, I mean, there didn't seem to be too many cans of deodorant around anyway.
No, but like you've got like a whole pool of goo fermenting people in it. That's gonna smell bad.
What does the atoll mean? I thought it was pronounced 8-ball because it was shaped like a round thing.
See, I told you.
Atoll's like a small series of islands, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, God, I'm doing so well this evening. Atoll. I thought they were saying 8-ball because it was the shape of an 8, like a cue ball or something.
No, it's an atoll.
What
or as Americans, an atoll.
Right. Okay. I mean, can we start again? Because I'm making myself look like a right idiot.
I just, after this, you're going to have a whole world of discovery. You can go read about seaplanes and atolls. And
get on National Geographic.
It's going to blow my mind, isn't it?
Yeah.
There's a world out there. I don't know. 2020's changed me. Matthew, have you got any other scenes of note that spring to mind on your big list?
On my big list, so my notes involved the bungee rope of exact size and length, which annoyed me greatly. It's like, if that was in any way a different size, wouldn't work.
Yeah. Well, you'd kill her.
Just like land, smash her in the forehead, and then bob back up again.
Yeah,
completely safe.
Oh God!
There was quite a lot of reckless child endangerment where he kind of just set fire to her or threw her around to somewhere. It's like, okay, fine. Jane Triplehorn's instant nudity. She has like a kind of a very handy closed ripcord which she pulls, and instant nudity appears. And I was thinking to myself, because I mean, the future looked, if I may say so, a bit rapey.
Yeah.
And I don't want to, victim blame, but I mean, even as a man, I would make sure I'd be wearing something quite close fitting and hard to remove. And the last thing I'd want would be, ripcord clothing, as they tend to have. The whole that scene with we tried to sell her for a couple of pieces of paper annoyed me. Because he goes, there's 2 pieces of paper in here, man, and he pulls it out. There's like 6 at least. So why would you? That whole sequence it's just so 90s. The way that it's so flippant and ridiculous. And also, are we supposed to think, that we're booing the character even more? The Mariner guy, fish guy. I mean, this is where he should be redeeming himself, and he doesn't. I mean, obviously he does to some extent. A little bit.
Have to foot down firmly and say that no children. But I mean,
I know, but that's not really good enough, is it? It's like,
no.
And she's later like, oh, are we going to die? Let's have sex. And it's just
yes. One of my notes was death sex.
He literally just sold you to a mental guy that just floated up and was crazy. Only mere moments ago, and tried to sell your.
The paper was terms and conditions as well, because I tried to read it and it looked like the sort of terms and conditions to
and there was
there's
the front cover of Dynasty magazine, whatever that might be.
Yeah, that's if anything, I could remove that. If they could edit that whole sequence, all those sequences out, though, but it wouldn't change the movie's plot or progress at all. It would just make it a much more.
But the thing is, later on, it turns out that he's got like a whole National Geographic downstairs anyway.
Yeah.
So why would he want these sort of 2 crappy pages?
Because he's an asshole.
He's an asshole.
It's pure and simple. I did not like the character one bit, and I thought he would have something a little bit more.
Also, after he killed that guy, you'd eat him, right? Like,
would you?
You'd definitely eat him.
Well, when you've got massive sea monsters the size that are roaming around, apparently, that's a bit of a shocker when that happens. We're
very brief shock.
Maybe you just don't need a man butt for dinner. You've got plenty of fish. I don't know. He doesn't look tasty, does he?
Well,
no, he look,
once you washed him off a bit and a little bit
with what? There's no water.
A little bit of oregano.
He's got he's naturally seasoned.
He would pair nicely with a tomato plant, though, probably.
There's a couple of other things as well in terms of that process of the women on screen. The representation of all the women on screen is either next to nothing, as you say, as an object for some to be traded or as to be fridged, and it's a common thing for the 90s. Something, thank goodness, that we're seeing a lot less of in movies nowadays, though, I guess, Jane.
Yeah, I mean, I mentioned Fury Road. Thank goodness Fury Road is the opposite and shows competent women. I mean, one of the things that is annoying about this is that, Helen lives on the sea and cannot fish. What the hell? Like, why can't you fish? That you have nothing else to do, love, but learn to fish. And so that sort of inadequacy and sort of patheticness of women that we see in 90s movies is incredibly irritating to a modern audience, I'm sure. But yeah, we have come further, not probably as far as but we're not seeing that as much anymore. Unless we see a sort of throwback film that, they do make the odd one now and then that's deliberately a sort of 90s throwback. But yeah, it's not a great look for Kev, the 2 Kevs, Kevin Reynolds or Kevin Costner, to be so sort of it's sort of women as you say, either old biddies that are dead and what are only good for slime, or as something to trade. And all of them sort of no skills.
When does the goodwill run out with this kind of thing? Does it ever, or do you just think, is it just something we just have to put up with if we're going to enjoy these movies?
I think you kind of have to, don't you? Or you're going to get into the realms of, like Spielberg editing out his guns from E.T. and fiddling and retro messing with stuff. I think it has to be viewed as what it is, which is a sort of historical document of a time and a period, and it shows us, where we were as a society as well as anything else. And, you can be entertained by it as long as you're aware that it's not okay to, be racist or be, homophobic or, sexist, misogynist, all of those things. I think if you can watch it and appreciate that that's what's happening and be aware of it, it's totally fine.
So in terms of old Kevin Costner's career after this, what was his next movie would have been? I'm trying to think.
Was it The Postman?
Yeah, he went apocalyptic again with The Postman.
Right.
Which you would think you were bitten once, Kev. Maybe don't go down that.
And also, it's almost like he's gone, right, so that didn't go too well. What's this next film? It's called The Postman. Right, okay, I'm in.
Yeah.
Post-apocalyptic postman. Just brilliant.
Maybe he just thought we'll just do it better this time. But sadly he didn't. But Kevin, I think he's had a really, interesting career since then. He has actually played, various sort of supporting characters and directed a couple of interesting films, and he's still working, and I still think he's a incredibly charismatic screen presence, and I still enjoy watching him. So, but I am a bit of a Kevin fan, I admit.
You're a Kev fanatic.
I am a bit, yeah.
I could always take him or leave him. I liked him in The Bodyguard, but even though I just think he's a bit smug. Fantastic presence in one of the only good things about Zack Snyder's Superman.
He's great in that. He brings that.
Yeah, and he's really nice. Nice is, for want of a better word. He's got a great presence. He comes very wise. He's gentle, and I love that part of him. And I think you see that in some of his other older movies. But you have to kind of really dig deep for that. I think for him, he's quite a difficult guy to like, in my opinion. But that's my opinion anyway.
And Kevin Reynolds came out afterwards and said that Kevin Costner should only be in films that he directs himself, because then he could work with his favourite actor and his favourite director.
Yeah, I don't think their friendship came out of this very well.
So, what are we going to do with this movie, Matthew?
I think it's going to be out. I mean, I remember when I first watched this, and I watched it after hearing all the negative things, and I remember at the time very specifically that everyone smashing on about how much it cost, and I think the massive overrun of budget and everything kind of when you produce the world's most expensive film, people expect an awful lot of that, and because of that, they kind of probably went watching this and expected a little bit too much. It's a spectacle. It's got a lot of stuff going for it. I mean, it is a bit aged, but then so is everything around that time. But yeah, no, I would definitely release this out of the bunker. Just to escape the fetid smell of rotten flesh.
Okay, for me, I agree. It's half in, half out. For me, it's kind of loitering around on the surface, based on just some of the hideousness of it, which is quite hard to swallow. But other than that, yeah, it is great for an MTV 90s Duran Duran video thing. I think it was great. And obviously, Jane, as you are a guest, it does get the golden ticket anyway.
Oh, so does it? Brilliant. I'm glad.
Explain the concept of the bunker. It's a very silly thing, really. Basically, all the movies that are bad are in the bunker, and we decide whether they are released or not. It's kind of the opposite of what it should be. We never thought it through properly, but never mind. So yeah, your movie, the Waterworld, is out into the general public domain.
Brilliant.
For everyone. And yeah, that's it. I think that's all we can say about Waterworld. I mean, it needs its own podcast series, because there's an awful lot of trivia on it in terms of. You could really dig deep in terms of the problems, but we won't do that. We'll just talk about the tomato plants and the lime plants, if that's okay. The surface stuff.
Yeah, I mean, they didn't spend any of that budget on those plants, did they? Those were the least convincing things in the film.
Oh, who knows?
Well, at the very end, when after they found dry land, and he decides it's not for him, and he wants to go back to the sea, he takes what look like rubber plants back to sea with him, which, although will make his boat look rather lovely.
Yeah. Can't eat them though, can you?
You can't eat them. There's not a lot of fruit on a rubber plant.
Jane, thank you so much for coming on and defending the honour of Waterworld. I think you've done it incredibly well.
Thank you very much.
Where can we find you on sort of online, and what can we look out for next in terms of Total Film? Well,
our current issue is on sale right now with a 80s classic film on it. We are celebrating Bill and Ted Face the Music on our issue at the moment. So if you want to know all about whether they're actually going to manage to make their third film as good as or bad, depending on your opinion, the first two, you can look for that. And we also have a regular podcast of our own every Thursday, which you can find. It's called Inside Total Film.
Excellent. And can we find you on Twitter? Is your Twitter handle?
Yep, I am TotalFilm_Jane.
Excellent. Thanks ever so much, Jane, for coming on today. If you're interested in following us on the socials as well, make sure you search for the Movie Bunker Podcast, Twitter, Instagram, and all that jazz. If you haven't already left us a lovely review and a rating, make sure you do that as well. That helps us greatly. And the website address, Matthew?
www.moviebunkerpodcast.com.
Yeah, and there's Patreon, and you can buy us a coffee if you wish to. It helps us pay the rent on the server, but there's clearly no need to do that. But we always have to say it. Thanks again, Jane.
No worries.
Thanks, Matt.
Bye-bye.
Take care.